This book is very positive. It has been reported that if you always think good in mind, the brain weakness can be prevented even if you are old. Only reading this book can be beneficial for the mind if you look at this book. Goldberg has told us that the strength of understanding our thinking, our intent increases even more with age. Now hope that we can keep the mind as much as possible when we are elderly. This book relieves hearing negative things about being old. Introduced how many things are better than age as well as human beings. Even if there is any illness in the body, this book will motivate people that they can be amazing even after aging. Goldberg has very well explained that the brain weakness caused by illness and normal aging makes a difference. This book is good for those who want to keep their minds good. This is a fantastic review of the world of neuroscience. The book is filled with knowledge to think and to the foremost is. I would recommend reading this book to every person who wants to keep his mind sharp. Goldberg has also written the Executive Brain book. He is a professor of neurology at the Medical College of New York University. He spends his time in private practice, research, and teaching. He lives in New York City. Let's try to understand this book in detail. Every unhappy family is different in the story of Tolstoy. The midlife crisis is different for everyone. I first felt my midlife crisis coming when I came to my 6th decade of life and found an experience that led to the heart. I felt for the first time that it is now essential to both my past yesterday and tomorrow. I would like to understand my life properly. I thought to go to my born country after the first 26 years to meet old friends, which did not talk about half of life. I also wrote a book in which I tried to understand my past life today and forth. Some of the reasons that were just related to thinking. There was no special force. I also thought what my body has suffered over time. I didn't care about my health for many years. So go now and get a complete body checkup. I was very happy when the report came to my health is less than my real age. I am a biological young. I heard it, but it was not too surprised because I was feeling good and my energy was very similar. Then I thought that MRIs also have a magnetic resistance imaging so that what is going on inside the head see. There was no point of weakening of my mind. I was confident that my understanding and thinking is exactly right. Because I had a good book, I was giving lectures in the world, unless the notes did even explain the difficult things and took several things together. It was a good shot. My private clinic was also good running and career. Sometimes, the assistants and students of their younger ages were seduced by my energy and focus is more than them. I also knew my family history has some problems. There was no case of dementia in the family, but my mother had passed away from a stroke. He was also brain's disease at the age of 95 years and his younger brother called multi-infarct disease. I also knew I had seen his brain's MRI and had caught the disease. My lifespan was not good for many years. I grew up in Russia and came to America at the age of 27 years. I left my old country's politics, but did not leave their bad habits. I smoked plenty up to 40 years of age, then finally left. For years, many wines were more than the middle edge of the Jewish intellectual eye. I had a habit of harming the mind. As a neuroscientist, I see the brain in the lab completely different and cold-minded. As a clinical neuropsychologist, I also quickly recognize the short-lost problems of the brain of others. But when it comes to your mind, MRI was afraid that there is no bad news. My fear is not just was. When I talked to my friends who had 2 large neuroscientists, neurologists and psychiatrists, everyone had to say that they were not interested in knowing what is going on inside their head. Don't look at what's above the neck, says all laughing. I'm afraid to have the most worry and the truth is like I dare. Many people speak about me. I consider myself always daring and facing the truth in a straight way. So I decided to make MRI. My neurosurgeon friend Jim Hughes first joked and refused. The Jim said that if a small tumor was found in brain, the entire life will go out of anxiety. He took the name of Harv Cushing, who himself had a famous neurosurgeon and also had tumors in his brain. I said in a joke, there's so dare inside me that there came something like I'll handle him properly and I'm always good to know. My life will go to worry if the Jim said, then if something went bad. After all we deleted that Jim anxiety is assured the price is for my curiosity and the Jim assumed. Over 3 years I have been researching the bearing of brain damage and watching hundreds of CTs and MRI scans. I was going to see my own brain scan for the first time. I knew that even a little brain damage could be dangerous for both minds and humans. But I thought I'd see what I'd see. So in the morning of a sunny April I went to MRI center, reported and scanned after a few days. I didn't see what I did not too good. The above parts of brain i.e. cortical sulci and the inside ventricles report had the normal size. I'm also looking for a tricycle on Silky so normal, even if it is normal to be with age. This meant some brain atrophy. Also in the left part of brain there were 2 small spots in white matter. It was seen in MRI. What does it mean? It was not completely clear. Probably it was a loss of blood or slin in parts of the brain. I had a mild brain damage. The news was not bad. My major arteries were absolutely fine. Blood flow was good. There was no interruption and blood vessels were strong. It was clear in all reports. Blood pressure was slightly higher, but normalized. I.e. big strokes or vein bursting risk was very low. The portions of the brain needed for memory were also the normal that was very good because it could lead to Alzheimer's. To finish my fear, I went to John Corona, a famous neurologist of New York. He sees the scan another expert show also. Both said that everything is normal according to age. Those little spots are also not concerned about anxiety. Corona said in fun, just your mind is overweight and nothing else. I thought my ventricles are older than the rest of the people and spots are also not part of common aging. I also scanned my old friend Dr. Sadie Anton. He told his spot to be found, and all the rest said normal. It is a very beautiful mind. Now my anxiety was over. I'm looking for this brain MRI experiences felt two-way interesting. He's so neurological and a little nervousness. A checkup should be done in routine if seen from medical and psychotropic eyes. At least once every 3-4 years, as the rest of the body is examined. The same should be the brain. The causes of dementia in the elderly are not less than the rest of the diseases. This strange and wrong thinking hinges on two kinds of beliefs. One of the common people and other health professionals. Yet people believe that mind is not part of our body and he does not need to check in a medical way. It's wrong to think that the old mind and body have been separated from the idea. Now people are beginning to understand that mind is also formed from brain and brain is part of the body. This book will also focus on the same. Health professionals believe that if brain's disease is taken early, then it is not treated. What is the benefit? He believed that the patient would be just irritating and not be treated, would increase the cost of the skin on society. But now it's changing thinking because now there have been new ways to protect the brain from weakening. Now this story is not correct that nothing can be done. Yet I believe that what I did was with a little nervousness, i.e. neurotic heavier. Many people who are bothered by their age, no matter how sensible it is, everyone deal with this fear in their own way. I got a brain MRI scan. The rest of the people do not want to know if they are afraid. This entire experience became a reason for me to think about the growing age of mind and what will happen. Basically, brain health and brain damage are not just two options. There are a lot of things in the middle, meaning there are also gray shades. Baby boom hears words, so American feels like it everywhere. The number of children grew everywhere after the Second World War. When Alzheimer's epidemic talks, millions of people live in tension with their age. The background of many of them is like me. How much anxiety is right and how much is the tension of waste? There is a combination of both true and falter fears that have up to middle edge come and come. The thinking in my case also increases more than professional knowledge as I see patients with brain aging and dementia daily. Perhaps my thinking can work for the rest of the people. I hope this experience of an aged neuroscientist. This experience will be beneficial for people from every age. When we are young, there is a desire to know new things. We take the risk. People say that age should have stability, but what stability means is always a kind of boring life is the stagnation. What is the age of the brain? It is only weaker or gets something good. When I think of my age, I find that my thinking is at least before. The mind does not slow down, works well many times. I always try to keep myself moving forward. Life will be stayed. If you don't have something new in life, you just have to live. The most common things that have changed with age can not only be explained by Napital. My mind is neither weaker than ever. First, things that seem to be difficult now solves automatically. Now I need to do a large hard calculation as the brain grabs the pattern. First, I was proud that I could understand the class of difficult maths without notes. It's very important to think about it at the age of 57. On the other hand, some things have become easier. Now, when there is a difficult problem, the solution comes to the mind without having to work. The strength I've lost in hard work has taken a sense of understanding from the pit. Another interesting thing is when I have no hard, sometimes there is a different thing to remember in the brain. The first thing that does not seem to be connected is the same problem at all. The things that seemed different are now understood. It gets itself and feels great. It seems like a child find a hidden cookie jar and eat with fun. Also, there is another deeper thing that seems strange even to assume. I think I can control my life more than ever. Now life looks like a big party. First time always think schedule, and I also know that this party will not always go. Yet with age, it's more to pull. The real game of aging is the same. Seeing the impact of it, staying surprised and trying to lengthen the party. Because life is not just the name of being weak. It has both good and bad moments. Now the question is that what is the realization of the fun? First I felt that somewhere I'm not doing too big things. So I stay in the simple language of science wanted. Wisdom's place was called pattern recognition. Yet I believe that the changes that have come with age are real wisdom paradox. Our mind is part of a natural body. We also get new understanding and fun when brain changes with age. If we learn curiosity and new things in childhood and the experience of growing up is more strengthening it, then at the same time, we can really feel at the last end of life. I decided to write this book in which I just mind the cognitive talk to the iron. Iron is very big topic, but I will talk about the same aspect in it. This book is very similar, so it has different things and themes. Some chapters are on history and culture, as chapter 3, 4, 5, and 12. Some chapters are on psychology, as chapter 1, 4, 5, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. How does some chapter brain work? How does this wiring and problems come in on it? As chapter 2, 6, 7, 13, and 14. After all, I will tell what can be done to prevent brain aging as it is in chapter 14, 15, and epilogue. These different topics are linked to the same question. What is the thing that makes the brain of aging so amazing? And how can we increase it further? The names of my patients have changed so that their privacy remains. But my stories were real and exactly as I wrote. I've tried to explain wherever any technical term came. We will start the chapter 1 from which we talk about the small working brain machinery of the life of daily will. Thereafter the chapter 2 will be a matter of brain's development and maturity and aging. This chapter takes the greatest question of this book. What is the thing that makes the mind of aging so big? In the chapter 3 I will talk about some of the people of history who are in a very large role despite their age or dementia. In this, you will see that brain's aging is less than what people think, and sometimes even a wonderful instance. Next we will see which amazing mental powers on aging come such as iron, expertise, and competences. This chapter is in 4. Then I'll talk about the most essential topic of the book, i.e. the pattern recognition. We will see which types of pattern recognition are and how it works in our mind. Language is also a kind of pattern recognition. There are many things that help us think. This chapter is in 5. It's time to understand how patterns are formed in brain and what is the relationship of patterns and memory. This chapter will come in 6. Basically, every pattern is a memory, but not every memory pattern occurs. What is the thing that separates the patterns from the rest of the memory? And why do the patterns remain the most tidy even when brain is spoiled? This chapter is in 7. How does well-made pattern recognition help brain and how to make it happen? This chapter will be explained in 8. Here we will disassemble the descriptive knowledge. What is this and what does the principal knowledge mean now? The difference between it. What to do now is a very important role for our life. This knowledge deposits in brain's frontal lobes, that's the part that is weakest and aging. The frontal lobes will come in the chapter 9. Brain is a great specialty of design. Why are the two hemispheres of the brain? There are many things on this, but no one is able to clear completely. I will bring a new idea. Right hemisphere is for new things and left hemisphere for old good patterns. With age we begin to dip much on old patterns. It is all in chapter 10 and 11. Both parts of the brain are different for emotions, not just for thinking. Positive imams are associated with left brain and negative emotions right brain. What to take in style and aging. It is in chapter 12. The effect of aging is different on both brain hemisphere. Right brain is small on the left brain remains much strong. It is in chapter 13. The answer is in brain's plasticity, which will be discussed in chapter 14. Now the scientists believe that the new nerve cells, i.e. neurons, are formed every age. And this nerve cells goes into the same brain parts we are the most use more. We use more of left brain in aging. That's why he's more healthy. Here's a wonderful thing to do if you keep brain active. Brain's age increases, i.e. brain and healthy gets. Methods to keep brain active in chapter 15. At the same time, the epic will talk about the aging is not just bad, but also its advantages. Aging is the right price if we give the irony to it. So now, we will learn that this amazing game of aging as well as the mind. What is it? Chapter 1: The Life of Your Brain. Most people do not consider irony, XP, or compression as a body thing, while there are actually even biological things. Everyone knows that our mind is formed from brain, but how deep this relationship really is, it is very few people understand. Many people consider brains and minds different today, which was considered in the old time. People also believe that mind is different from brain and is different from the body. I was surprised when I had once laid workshop on brain so that people where brain basics of science can be understood. What to take from mind's brain? Similarly, when I talked about the memory, many people had the same question, and when I went to a big event that was the world's famed scientists, leaders, artists, and sports champions, most people believe that talent and personality are just in the hands of human beings and it is not part of the mind. I explained that all this comes from brain. Personality is also a product of brain, but the silence took place to consider me. And then a large diplomat said that this conference is on mind, not on brain. I've been surprised that people with such a big thought don't understand the basic thing. What I want to explain is this. as any body damage is caused by any muscle. Every activity of the mind is similar to brain. If you have any problems in brain, then the most simple brain can even worsen. Therefore, when we talk to the age of the brain, its advantages, disadvantages, and digestions, it should always be remembered that all this is connected to the brain. About Us, my book, is the biggest message. It's the brain sheepskin. Is the brain of aging just weak? My answer is not. I believe that with age, there are strengths that come from aging. Now, it's time not to add your brain's age to weaknesses. Aging brings some weaknesses, but also a lot of good. As may be, memory and attention with age is a little lower concentration, but with the same as the experts, computations, and the biggest thing that the iron also gets. Both benefits and losses gradually come and all are associated with the changes in the brain. A lot of books are just written on the loss of aging. This book is written on the balance of both the benefits and disadvantages of aging. The happy ending of every story is sought today, but it is not necessary in real life. Everywhere we receive reports of dementia, Alzheimer's, and amnesia. It is true that diseases occur, but now it's time to look at the positive things we've met with the age of the brain. And its nice things are real. No false tits. Now let's talk about iron. That's the real good news. Every time in every society is considered to be ironed. This is the most common form of aging, but the question is whether it can last despite the weakening of wisdom brain. We use the word iron too much, but what is it really? Can wisdom be understood from the perspective of science and brain? According to me, as the age increases, the minds need to make new idea harder. Now the minds become older with the help of patterns solves the problem. I.e. with age, we have patterns or templates that quickly and easily solve the brain work that comes from time to time. As the patterns grow, the brain's thinking becomes faster. The same pattern is recognition and the brain gets the right decision. Our brain is made in layers. Old parts, i.e. subcortical structures, and a new part called cortex. Brain has two parts, right and left. As the pattern from the problem solving the resignation shifts, the role of the brain parts also changes. The dependency increases on the left brain, replacing right brain with age. These patterns of scientist brain also called the attractors. It is a group of nerve cells, i.e. neurons, that are quickly activated on any input. This makes the pattern recognition easier. I think people who have made more and more such patterns in their mind are actually able to achieve the necessary part of wisdom, or at least, faced with such patterns when aging, the mind can take a lot of good decisions. As long as this pattern remains in brain, wisdom can remain on the weakening of experts and content brain. But before we go to brain's increts, we first have to look at the irons as a human and social thing. We have to understand whether the mind can actually be saved despite the growing age of the brain. We will be able to understand what happens in brain when wisdom, experts, and competence increases. What does the mind get in origin? Now take a little bit of your brain's introduction before you go into these fun questions. How wonderful is our brain? It understands how it works in small things of the day. If you think that the sound of the alarm lifted you from a deep sleep. If there is another sound of a dog, a siren, a fire brigade, or rain, then perhaps you sleep again. But the sound of the alarm was identified and your frontal lobes said to rise. Important. School or office, go brother. You look out from the bed. There is no way to go completely. Your visual cortex is working on, which makes it look good weather out. It seems common. You will not be able to see things even if this part is spoiled. Then you go to the bathroom and see things like a brush, toothpaste, mouthwash, razor. Identifying all this is possible because of your left brain, visual association cortex of left hemisphere. If this part is damaged, then you can do things. You will see, but you will not be able to recognize. I had a patient who did not recognize the things of the bathroom as soon as the morning arises. The night later revealed had stroked her so that her brain's visual part was damaging. This led him to visual object agnosia. Now you pick up the brush. The right hand of 90% of people works as left brain is attached to it. Your motor cortex, cerebellum, and basal ganglia become all active, catching and using the brush right. It all stores in parietal lobe. If this part is damaged, people are wrong use. Just as the brush catches upside down or don't wear clothes right, you brushed, dressed, and pulled out. The sound of music coming out. Your right temporal lobe music jazz and the left brain changes it in words. Then you read the paper while drinking coffee. The left temporal lobe understands the nouns, left frontal lobe verbs, and left parietal lobe villager. If these parts are damaging, it may be difficult to speak. If you're thinking about reading news that the market is down, then your prefrontal cortex is wondering what will impact your job. If you remember the old news, this means that your hippopy is okay. Omega activates if the mode worsens. The prefrontal cortex takes full work, especially the right Amazona is now rushing to the office. The 5 meetings have to set 3 calls in time. It is the work of right brain to see new faces in the elevator. Watching time in the cab, telling the way to the cab driver is the work of the frontal lobe, i.e. sequences, and parietal lobe, i.e. special info. If the cab driver English, if you don't think it's a teamwork of frontal, parietal, and temporal lobe, you finally reached the office. Given the money of the cab, count money. This is the work of the left parieto-temporal. If this part is deteriorated, counting can come in calculation. This was just a few morning tasks, and so your brain became completely busy. There are also different parts of brain for small everyday habits. Actually, a lot of parts of brain work together. Scientists call them functional system R. Now let's say you're looking for a comfortable TV on weekends. Feelings are not something special, but your brain is still very active. TV's picture, visual cortex, and voice, auditory cortex are both processed. Viewing images in the story of news, understanding the voice of the reporter is the teamwork of different parts of brain. Languages also process a lot of places in brain. Nouns, left temporal lobe, verbs, left frontal lobe, villager, left parietal lobe. If a brain part is damaged, it is difficult to speak. Comes that are called aphasia. Right brain considers emotional tone. What is filling in the voice mean prosody? So when the voice of the news anchor suddenly becomes severe, the right brain on alert becomes. If an animal is in the house such as dogs, he also swells the same tone. Identifying the surrounding voice is also the work of brain's temporal lobe. Now look at faces on TV. If there is an unknown face, right brain is activated. Left brain is active if there is an identified face. That's what map looks like with breaking news on the screen. He processes special parietal lobes. Whatever they hear becomes the same story together in the mind. This work does heteroidal association coax. It is the newest part of brain and quickly damages such as Alzheimer's. If you remember that the news of the same area came 2 days ago, it is amazing of hippocampy. Happiness is that the new nerve cells in hippocamp can become neurons and make the brain grow more. Now think brain has the greatest strength to keep someone in place. The scientist's theory of mind says, it is the work of all the prefrontal cortexes taking decisions by understanding, planning, and thinking. This is brain's newest and lately matched part. If tired and sleepy, this means that brain's activating system, i.e. reticular formation, is now required to rest. Now that you take a turn of the dog will rest, your that's the feeling of getting a little happiness. Let's say that every little bit of our daily complete brain inactivity works like a team. Even when we think we are just watching TV or resting. This is the real magician of the mind. Chapter to Sage of the Brain. Now science also assumes that mind and brain cannot be seen separately. Even if you're not a brain scientist, but daily surge use your brain. But the truth is that most of us do not take much interest in what is going on inside our brain. As long as all is running fine. If Johnny gets struck by eating rum from hepatitis, he will go to the doctor so that he feels bad, is exhausted, his face turns pale, and he has to know about the enzymes or viruses of his liver. Johnny does not know deeply about his liver, but he believes that his filling dips on the liver's condition. But when the talk of mind-brain's relationship, yet people don't understand it deeply if it comes to. Now people understand that the brain will affect, the mind will change. Now the question is that if we keep brain good, mind can also be good. If yes, then everyone should take care of his brain. As people now think about the healthy body, brain's aging largely dips on how you used your brain in the young age. I will also tell how to improve brain and mind even when aging is possible and how it can be. First of all, we have to understand that brain, what are the natural processes in the age. I'm taking an example of the CS to understand the life of brain and mind. As seasons change, brain and mind also has different phases. This phase gradually changes, not sudden. This timing can be different in every person. So are usually considered 3 seasons of brain: development, maturity, and aging. The first season is of development of developing brain. The basic strengths of the brain are formed in this phase. This process starts even before it arises, and the third decided I. The third decade, i.e. runs from 20 to 30 years. Brain development is a very complex process. First neurons are formed. Then it goes to the right place. The first thought that it is only in childhood, but now it turns out that the texture of neurons, i.e. neurogenesis, lasts over age. Just faster it decreases. As neurons reach the right place, they begin to become connections in themselves. Those who say eggs or dendrites. The branching that is in the dendrites is called arborization and process childhood the most. When there are small spaces between neurons, they talk in themselves. These are called synapses. The process of becoming of them is called syngenesis. This timing is different in every part of brain, as it is quickly completed in visual cortex, but in the prefrontal cortex it runs to the adult edge. As well as the neurons and connections that are built, the faltus are eliminated by themselves. It is called pruning or apoptosis. It is similar to any idle. Which part is not working deleted. The neurons that are higher are saved. The rest gradually eliminates. This whole process is also called neural Darwinism. Brain contains only neurons, contains astrocytes and oligodendrocytes. The mindset begins in brain at a time, i.e., oligodendrocytes make a fatty coating around the axons, i.e. methylene. This is why white matter and gray matter are different in brain. Maination process prefrontal cortex is longest moving, sometimes up to 30 years of age. It is clear that brain development is a combination of a lot of process which are at different times. This is the time when mind is formed, learns, and prepares its identity, i.e., identity. Frontal lobes are especially the prefrontal cortex matches at the last, often around 20 to 30 years. So at the same age, people get the strength to match the maturity, control on themselves, further thinking, i.e. foresight, and judge themselves. That's why adult age is started around the world is, whether there is a driving license, voting, getting married, or going in a profit. This is due to the maturity of the prefrontal cortex, and the same is regarded as the line between brain's first and second season, i.e. the development and maturity. The second season is the maturity. Mature brain. Brain becomes more stable in this phase. Now let us work more than learning in our lives, create and add something to the world. This is the age when most studies, job, and life responsibilities are met. The first research on the same phase focused. It is now understood that every person is slightly different in terms of brain, his gender, and personal life. The third season is aging. Aging brain. What does this magnificent machinery of brain withstand as it ages? This question was not asked earlier. The fast doctor of old-fashioned Hippocrates also did not mention brain in old age problems. There are changes in the body with a truly growing age that there was no more attention to the condition of the brain. Brain changes with aging. Whether aging healthy and normal, why not? It's not a strange thing because brain is also the same as the organ of the rest of the body. Research in the last few decades has now shown us what changes in brain on aging. Even if there is no disease or dementia, some changes occur in the entire brain. The weight of the brain and the size, i.e. the volume, decreases about 2% every 10 years. The ventricles inside the brain become large. The folds that are sulci on the surface of brain are further emerged, and it all shows that brain tissue has a little atrophy, comes with a little shrinkage. The connections between neurons are reduced, as well as synapses that connect brain cells to themselves also reduces their density. Brain also reduces blood flow and oxygen supply. The aging effect is on both gray matter and white matter. Small spots appear in white matter, which is called hyperintensities in MRI. Usually it's caused by vascular problem, but sometimes it can occur even from the low of myelin. Bearing there is no direct SB part initially do not damage it, but the strengths of the brain begin to decrease when it increases. The effect of age on parts of brain is high, less on some. The new parts of the brain such as the prefrontal cortexes are the most impacted. This is the same part that is responsible for planning and complex heavier. Old parts such as sensing and motor control are less affected. The effect of age is the earliest on which brain parts are developed. The mind is also aimed at. Join this lays in the parts. There is more risk of age bearing. Yet the prefrontal cortex is especially the dorsolateral part most vulnerable. Here are the essential chemicals of gray matter, white matter, and brain, i.e. neurotransmitters such as dopamine, norepinephrine, and serotonin. The condition of the frontal lobes is the most important detection between aging and maturity. The effect of age on certain parts of brain such as hippocampus and amygdala is a bit. Hippocampus is essential to create memory and fun for amygdala emotions is that second age does not have a special effect on hippocampus in animals such as monkey or rat brain. Another important thing is that the pattern of bearing on brain in Alzheimer's like normal aging and dementia is different. Hippocampus and temporal parietal lobes in Alzheimer are worsened much faster. While the most impact in normal aging occurs on the frontal lobes, the rest of brain like basal ganglia, cerebellum, and midbrain also has a milder effect. But the pages and text remain almost the same. Now the question is that all this changes on mind how to put the effect. Research shows that the speed of brain processing decreases when aging and the senses weaken. Things related to the frontal lobe like meditation, constriction, and restraining themselves, i.e. ambition weakens. Working memory makes it weaker to work on it by keeping in mind some information. Changing focus, multitasking, and new learning is also gradually difficult. Certain types of attentives such as selective attenuation and divided attenuation are also weakened. Memory, especially the strength of remembering new things. Memory and episodic memory, it is most quickly affected. This is why learning new things is first difficult with aging. But now come to good things. As much as research has been seen, elderly people often work great in real life despite so many brain weaknesses. Also in home and in your profession. Many also work large executive or creative in old age. Scientists call this unique strength cognitive experience. Not yet understood. How it works. In the next chapters of this book, we will understand the same secret. That's the strength of the brain and the real secret of wisdom even after aging. In order to understand this, we will learn from the stories of some of the FEMs that remain observative, competence, and irony in mind despite the age of growing. Even when brain becomes a little too weak, this is probably the paradox of real brain and mind. Chapter 3: Aging and Powerful Minds in History. The age of humans usually goes from the age of generating a child to a lot that occurs in very few species. Why is it? Scientists believe that elderly people play a very important role for society by delivering their temperament and knowledge to new generation. It is often overlooked in common people. The strength of the mind in our society is often added to the youth and the mind weakness is merged with aging. Just as John, the 19-year-old son of my friend said, I am surprised when people like Papa learn something new. While he's seen Europe's large university leader, presidency candidate, and there are members of the parliament, yet John had no impression. In today's time, such thinking takes the successful and innovative life challenge of many elders. There are many stories of people who have been wondering in old age. I'll focus on just 2 points here to make it happen. The first point is that some people reach the true height of their brains in old age. I call these late and luminous bloomers. There are many people who have the greatest access or creativity 60, 70 or came at the age of 80. As Goethe wrote the second part of Faust at the age of 83. Antony Gaudí has completed the focus on his biggest building Sagrada Familia at the end of life. Grandma Mojis began painting at the age of 70 and at the age of about 80. Norbert Wiener wrote his famous books at the age of 54 and 70. Goldmer guided the country by becoming the Prime Minister of Israel at the age of 71. Nelson Mandela made her country a new identity by becoming the President of South Africa in 76 years. The second point is that if a person is the strengths of the brain are less, even if the dementia starts, many people can still do a big job. I call these eroding the powerful minds. It may seem that how one can contribute so much to society in the early stages of dementia, but there are many such cases in history where such people took tremendous deceit or worked creative, while his brain had an age or illness. In fact, a lot of patterns already made in the brain of these people have been recognition devices, i.e. Juve shortcuts, health, and these things support them even after brain's weakening. Dementia means losing the mind, but in fact this process is slowly in years. There are only a few functions in the beginning. The rest of the mind works well for years. People can work with great responsibility for several years. Every light cognitive problem does not mean that he is completely weakened mindfully. I mentioned earlier that people who already have the power of the turban pattern recognition age even after growing, the brain can withstand weakness. Chapter 4: Wisdom Throughout Civilizations. Is there a gift or a reward earned from the hard work? The amazing of the irony has always surprised the philotravels, psychologists, and common people. Since the beginning of history, wisdom has been given special status and has been established in every culture. If you have learned a Confucius or the sayings of Solomon, look at the star of wisdom everywhere. Many large scientists and public figures even in the new time tried to understand wisdom as a psychological and social phenomenon. Due to this, there are many books of the name wisdom, each of which is different. One of these is the book edited by Yale's popular psychologist Robert Sternberg. It has several scientific research articles. I've also helped to write my book. A second eye is found in the book named Wisdom of Peter Thompson, in which he has tried to understand wisdom by interviewing many people. It has always been believed that in all mental powers, wisdom is most sought. Written in proverbs like wisdom is the principal thing, dear for gate wizard. But how does it get, and what exactly is it? The feeling of getting iron even at a personal level gives great selection and happiness. Sophocles wrote the irony is the supreme part of happiness. Psychologists Micheli and Kevin also assumed that the irony has been the topic of the most interest in understanding the human behavior for thousands of years. James Barron and Laurel Fisher believes that the first mention of wisdom gets into the handwriting of Isb in 3000 BC. Even later, wisdom tree or the 7 pillars of wisdom like symbols every culture look in. Even today, people consider wisdom to be intelligent and light symbols, and their lack of causes and confusion is a mystery even today despite such long history and interest. How does wisdom become in brain yet? There was no serious research on it. Robert Sternberg himself says to fully understand wisdom is probably not as wisdom in us. To understand so difficult topics, my professor Eligi Leontev said that if one has to do something easier, first make him a little more complex. So we'll see here as well as genius. Iron and genius are often remembered together. Sternberg has also put together the irony and creativity in its research. But genius is even bigger secret in itself. In the old time, both wisdom and genius were considered to be Lord luck or natural gift. Both rare and hard are considered quality, and most people believe that it is only a few people. Another interesting thing is that sometimes both wisdom and genius think so different that people do not understand. So let's go ahead with your time that people consider their things madness or nonsense. It also means that there is always a little ahead of the society to show the impact of wisdom and genius. But there is no understanding. Genius brings so new that we have no standard to judge it. As Carl Rezar said, the very essence of the creative is its nobility, and hence we have no standard by vi to jazz it. Now the question arises whether in history the big names such as Aristotle, Galileo, Newton, Einstein, true seconds were best. That the real genius was someone else who was so far from his time that he found no understanding. But if his memories were not yet, how we believe that he was really. Many times a forgotten genius again comes to the world. Just like Lardo da Vinci, if she is just engineered, she probably knows her name today. But because he was also the artist, the rest of their things came to people. Now let's talk about talents and experts that are quite good quality, but not so unreachable as genius or wisdom. Let's say that a lot of genius talent there is much strength form and the highest level of irony exposure or competence. Just as the native level of the genius talent is the NCST level of wisdom competition. Genius and talent are different points of the same line. Similarly, wisdom and competitions are also points of the same line. By doing so, we can reduce a little grandness of genius and iron, but instead we get a bit of claimability. These can be a little easier and practical. This makes it a bit easier to study the psychotropics. Both talent and experience important are quality, and it is impossible for most people to achieve them. It does not mean that everyone will reach genius or wisdom, but many people have a talent and experience. Whether it is on a small scale, we are not trying to fully understand the genius or irony as advised by Sternberg. We are talking about how to work with the neurobiology of these here. It's a little limited thing, because there are no factors such as ethics or society, but according to the mind it's very important from. Now make a simple definition of talent and competence. Suppose talent means creativity and novelty. That's what a man can do in his field, whether it is a new idea or a new art, new technology or a new system. Competence, on the other hand, means to see new problems from old problems and remove them. That is, a complex man has a lot of things in his mind that he can identify different issues and remove the right way. The psychologist also notices that there is a connection between the complexes and the viruses. According to Sternberg, people consider a sensible person to be able to solve any problems. It is important to know what to do now, as well as deep understanding in both wisdom or competence, not just to understand. The real value of iron and compression is in their practical power. Talent and genius, compression and iron are all connected in one way, but also different. Talent is a kind of promise. Commencement his result. Genius and talent are often linked to youth and from maturity to wisdom and commence. Watch the face of the stockings. He is a symbol of genius. Watch Tolstoy's face of wisdom. Many times in history have happened that there was a lot of talented men, but there was no iron in his life. As Caravaggio or Arthur Rim who never reached wisdom. There are a few people who had a simple at the beginning but later they emerged with a great wisdom, like Roman Emperor Claudius or Anne of Arsadat. We all Now let's talk about the problem solving, as this is the real identity of the virus and computing. Genius and wisdom or talent and competence don't always go together. Most people consider themselves that there is no more strain link in creativity and iron. Some people think that both of them are connected upside down. Another interesting thing is that people wisdom to intelligence or consider more of the creativeness I. They include all the good aspects of mind in intelligence. No one thing. People think that curiosity and clear thinking for new things is higher in young age and looks after wisdom 50. In a study, people told wisdom the most preferred trait. This makes a new thing. If people believe that the Iron Age comes with, they probably believe that there are also the benefits of being old and some of their special values. Competence also of maturity like wisdom the thing is. As for some psychologists, wisdom expert knowledge has the power to solve the life's large practical problems, and this knowledge comes from living long life. As a matter of Sternberg, I wouldn't talk about the rest of the aspects of wisdom such as his morality or the spirit side. Just talk about the problem solving. This is the aspect that can be best understood from neuroscience. If both iron and tuberculosis grows with age, then when the second power of the brain is decreasing, how it continues to grow is it? I.e. if our memory and focus are weakening with age, then how does wisdom and competence increase? What are the specialities that it retains despite the rest of the minds? Chapter 5 Pattern Power. What are the brain systems that protect wisdom, competence, and expertise from being old or brain disease? We have to understand the concept of pattern and pattern recognition to find the answer. Pattern recognition means when a person or animal understands by looking at a new object or problem that it is the same there is a type of thing as it has already seen. The strength of identifying patterns is the most essential part of our mind. If it does not happen, everything or the price does not seem at all, and we can't use any experience before. A lot of scientists believe that pattern recognition is the most important way of problem solving. Some of the patterns we recognize since childhood, the rest of the patterns we have to learn slowly in life. The ability to identify certain patterns in the brain of every animal already exists, but that doesn't mean everything fits into the minds in advance. But both the nature and the environment are together to achieve this potential. If you don't get the right environment or exposure in childhood, then this part of the mind is not a complete develop. I.e. most patterns are made from both genetics and environmental, and these roles are different for different patterns. Some of the pattern recognitions are those that have been required for the survival of the entire species from crows, so she largely falls into genes. It is called the neuroscientists who Queen Faster's phyletic wisdom. Just as fearing snakes, fearing heights, happy on the sun exit or refrain from fire. It's all the requests you come, but it's important to learn a little bit. Meaning is not just everything from genes. Some neurons in visual cortex are made to identify certain lines or angles. It is also a kind of phyllic memory. Some of the patterns are more important for every species. Some animals need to identify different sounds or colors. Therefore, in the mind of every sapphire, pattern memory is formed. Now of the culture, it's important that we don't just learn the patterns, but also learn from others and teach the next generation. In the rest of the spies, it learns most of all itself, and the more knowledge does not collect a place. But the human beings have cultures in which knowledge, experience, and patterns, language or symbols go through one to another and from generation to generation. This gives every human being the whole world's energies, which is more than one person's mind. Language, it's the most instant tool. Language is not just a way to recognize things, but it also gives us the power to think, imagery, plan about future and think new positives. We can also think of what is not yet and plan to change the world accordingly. Languages also contain some natural rules that connect to reality. As I will go to movies tomorrow, right? But I went to the movies yesterday. It would seem wrong for the future as time is against the rails. All language filters, we also guide our thinking patterns. Language is not just a way to keep knowledge, but it also creates a pattern of thinking. If you don't have a language, it's all about the world. But because of the language, we understand everything in categories and patterns. In childhood, when we learn words, we also learn to keep all things in the world. Every human being can gain the irony of the entire society due to the language. A person who is not alone. If a man is away from the language, his mental development may also stop and the condensation increases in mind. For this reason, the language is also considered to be very important in a disease like schizophrenia. In fact, the culture and the language together gives us the collective wisdom, because of which we are beyond the rest of our human beings. The same pattern and wisdom helps us think, understand, and solve the problem. Language holds thousands of years of experience in our whole society and human beings inside us and teaches us what is the difference in this world and what is necessary and whether no. But in real, irony is not just to tell things but also to tell us what we should do. What is it often when someone asks for an insensible person? What should we do now? Asks language is a tool that teaches us not just to recognize things but also teaches how to introduce us with them. Is language a true pacifier? It is very difficult to say, because anything or quality is divided into very different ways can. Every language creates the most important categories for its culture and society. In case of any other physique such as dog or dolphin, the language of the swell is divided by different perspectives. Language is a practical device that changes its user's needs. In the language that is wisdom does not come in a way in genes, but she meets culture and society. The language is very flexible in itself and also changes over time. As children can remove the sound of any language in the world, but as he grows in the environment of a particular language, some sounds are exempted and some are cooked. This is why the child learns the language quickly. He can speak without an accident, but what will be able to learn after a big deal will come to speak. It consists of both genetics and environment. Many times people think that there are so many similarities in different language of the world because there is probably a special fixed circuitry for the language in the brain. But the reality in the language is because humans live relationships like a world, alike and alike. When the atmosphere of a place is completely different, the language of the place is different. There are many different words for ice in the language of the scheme's people, because it is very important in their world. This is the city language of Langueses or Canary Islands, a clique of Africa which is made of their special place and need. Herbert Simon says that the behavior of any organism also dips on his environment and not just on his own mind or body. Mean if a difficult way is left, it will be a complex due to that environment. Similarly, the language of human beings is less than our mind and more than our need and society. Therefore, the language can be considered a treasure of the irony of the whole species. Some people say that children's language is so quick to learn that it is a biological trend in the brain, like the Language Institute. But today's research suggests that there is any skill in children, whether it's language, music, or driving, it can be learned quickly because the flexibility in their brains is higher. It takes time to learn new skills to the elders. It doesn't prove that every skill has different circuitry in mind. It is also due to the complexity of the brain and plasticity. Today's neuroscience also suggests that the language is not in any part of the brain, but in different parts of the brain there are different parts of the language. Motor cortex for action words, like, visual cortex, and so on for object words. This means the language is like a distributed network and not a fixed part. The language is so flexible and adaptive because of this. So, a special thing in the design of the mind is that it has made our brain's advanced parts more open-minded. There may be a lot of different types of information stores. The old parts such as hinges or moves have much hard wiring, but new resonances like the association cocks are more flexible and the strength of our higher thinking and learning in them is hidden occurs. That's why there are many levels of wisdom. File name I. Speeches. It comes from genes such as basic emotions and perception. Visitum of species. It comes from cultures such as language and symbolic systems. The group's irony is a group or a professional skill that is common in all. Individual's irony is a sense of learning a human's own life and learning that comes from both culture and experience. Scientists like Vygotsky and Luria showed that culture and language have a huge impact on our thinking and understanding. He also told that human beings interact with the knowledge of their society, and that is why our personal intelligence becomes. At the end, it proves that the mind has created the nature that he can create a lot of information, skills, and patterns. You can learn what you need. That is why the mind of the human being is different from the rest of the speech and so powerful. Chapter 6 Adventures on Memory Lane. Our brain is very powerful, and it has the strength to learn and understand every kind of new things. But all this quality and skills we have our experience and culture. Cultures learn slowly from culture. Now we will try to understand how the quality is formed in the mind, such as the irony, competence, abilities, and experts. First of all, we need to understand the memory, because the wisdom is associated with erectile dysfunction memory, especially with generic memory, remembers that are not an event or place, but a pattern. Most memories of the brain, especially complex memories, neox name of the brain in the part of the formed and store. Some of the memorized need even some brain parts, but the memories that are just formed in neocortex are more strong and are too late in illness or old age. Generic memory is the same. But what is a generic memory? To understand this, we have to understand the basic rules of memory. If I ask you that 23 years ago, AI years ago, today's day you ate in a dinner, you probably won't remember at all. But if the same dinner is a special spot just as the White House is dinner, it's hard to remember. Short things in normal life are very quickly forgotten, and that's good. If human beings always remember every little thing, the mind will be completely filled and it will be difficult to find the necessary things. So, the mind itself is a sign of what to keep and what to forget. Some rare people are people who remember everything but they don't have a gift for them but become a huge hassle. Russian psychist Luria wrote about a man who kept his mind every little one remembers that he was always upset and fed. It is important for us to forget that we don't forget the very important things. If one is suffering from heart or illness. So now, the problem of making normal mistakes can be called amnesia. Amnesia can be caused by a number of reasons, such as accidents, oxygen deficiencies, infections, alcohol addiction, sears, and so on. It is not possible to remember new things or forget old things. When a new experience or knowledge comes, the beginning of being remembered in the mind is from the sensory part of the senses, and the higher brain the systems process and connect to the old knowledge. The whole process changes the neuron of the brain. New protein is formed. New synapse, i.e. cell-to-cell connections, are formed and older are stronger. That's the real memory connection. This means that both to see something in the brain and remember that something happens in the same brain network. Scientist Stephen Koslin also revealed the PT scan that the same brain area is activated when you bring the image to your mind. First, people believed that there are different parts of the brain for short-term memory and long-term memory, but in reality both form the same place. This is just different steps of a process, no separate space. Some things in our mind are quite strange in terms of design. The nuclei that controls the area of the brain is in a small place. The coma may come if the part hurts, but the system of memory is made very smartly. It is stored in the network where any information came. If you have a pancake chemical and structural change in that network, it becomes very strong and does not emit from common diseases. But so strong memory is not formed by the same. It takes time, and the other brain structures should also help. When an information comes to mind, the cortical networks have repeated electric activity, i.e. revival, so that the thing has been alive for a long time. Sometimes this activity combines faraway brain areas, never moves in local circuits. Some chemicals such as glutamate and NMDA receptor. The process contains a lot of components. All of the activities together create memory paved and strong. Let us see a phone number on a poster. If you don't have the chance to write, you are repeatedly repeating that number in mind so that you can get home and write it. This electric loops keep moving in your mind. But as soon as you have noted the number, the memory becomes even better. In the same way, when a memory structure is encoded, it becomes more stable. Hippocampus and brain in this whole process stems play very necessary roles. This is not the main part of the storage. The cortical network properly works because of these. Add memories and keep the mind awakened. But that's why hippocampus diseases are the earliest damage in the specialty dementia. That's why it's time to remember new things. Once the memory is stored well in the cortex, the hippocampus needs are reduced. This is the realization that new memories are frizzy at the beginning and it takes a lot of time to digest. The first animal experiments seemed that being permanent memory takes just a few hours or days. But human research ultimate studies reported that this process in humans lasts several years. The memories that remain in mind even after 3 years usually remain with life. It is a matter of attention that a large part of our permanent memories is formed at the age of 10 to 30 years. Perhaps at the same age we learn most of the comments. In further chapters in the book, we will see how brain injury or what memory goes before the disease, which is the saving and which can be returned later, and this will tell us how the neurobiology of vism actually works. The problem in memory is called amnesia in technical language. The more complex the brain is, the more different way of memory can worsen. Amnesia is never complete, meaning all the memories of the brain do not go together, but there are different memories in different ways. Two main types of amnesia are described in neuropsychology: anterograde amnesia and retrograde amnesia. A person in antegrade amnesia does not remember new experience or information, meaning that the next thing is not missing after the accident or brain injury. Retrograde amnesia forgets things before the human accident or illness. The old memories are gone. Sometimes both the problems can be simultaneously, in which the human being is not able to remember something new, nor remember the old one. It is necessary to identify the anterograde and retrograde amnesia to know when brain injury or disease happened. Time is clear as if someone had an accident and has been missed since then. But brains in Alzheimer's like dementia slowly worsens, so the time does not detect. Yet it has been quite beneficial for doctors and scientists to identify both types. Although most people consider anterograde amnesia as much serious, but the retrograde amnesia in my experience is also the same important. I think people do not carefully study retrograde amnesia, so it turned out less about it. Retrograde amnesia is more interesting for me because it makes us understand how to organize and store memories in mind occur. Retrograde amnesia also shows us about the speed of becoming a long-term memory. The newest memories go first when the brain hurts, and the oldest memories go after the most, called the temporal gradient. If someone was in an accident, it may be that one forgets the 2-year-old things but remembering the childhood or 20-30-year-old things. The same happens in dementia. In the beginning, the old things are missing, but the new things quickly forget. It seems vomiting to hear, but that's what true. I asked many of my friends what memories do I go before in brain injury, new or old. All that said the old memories will go first, but really new memories go first. Doctors can understand that one's memory loss is from neurological regeneration or caused by psychological such as acting or stress. Another important thing is going to know from the temporal gradient how long it takes to become a long-term memory. If memory just depends the riverbedding activity, i.e. brain's electrical activity. So as long as this activity moves, the longer the memories remain frizzy. This is the refuge that many years or even decades of old memories can be lost after brain damage. The study saw that a part of the hippocampus brain also goes 15 years old memories when it comes to damage. This means a long process to become permanent memory. Permanent memory is not formed by the same, gradually formed, and we can understand this process from the shrinking retrograde amnesia, as some years or decades of memories disappear after the accident, but some memories with time gradually begin to return. On the newest memories never come back at all. This process can be different from the present to the present, and the memories that are lost are not returned from hypnosis or drugs. This makes it clear that long-term memory is the biggest challenge to become time. Many years sometimes take decades to become a memory pacifier. Brain repeatedly checks which memories are so important to keep them forever. In the next chapter, we'll know which memories are near in this difficult test. Go to mind forever. Chapter Intake Memory DAT Do Not Fed. The memories with generic memory are the ones that store things like one or the repeated things in mind. Just as you see the phone number on a billboard once away, remember it. Then again the same number is seen elsewhere, the chance of remembering it is increased. Once a thing is repetitive, the more often it becomes memory and stronger, and the keys to change in its long-term memory are also increased. The process of creating a memory is a little Darwin, survival of the fittest. A lot of memories are reduced from each other, but the most often repetitive ones that seem to be the most important are always in mind. Also work in becoming a memory. If an information seems to be very important to the brain part of the name amygdala makes that memory more strong. This is why things that are scared, excitation, or hobby are remembered much faster. Every experience creates separate neural networks in mind, but if two experiences are very similar to their networks, they also begin to overlap in themselves. When the common part of a lot of similar issues turns out to be the same store as a pattern in the brain, it is generic memory. This type of memory is stronger and does not rush even if the brain is worse. The larger and the generic pattern keeps the more robust and safe. A pattern does not just have things that you've seen before, but also knowledge about all the future options that resemble the pattern. That's why generic memory is the most stable, especially unique memories quickly forget, especially in brain injury or disease. Two main memory types are described in neuropsychology: procedural and declarative memory. Procedural memory is the one in which the skills come, like cycling, swimming, tying. Declarative memory is the one in which facts come, as the week has 7 days. Paris is the capital of France. Another division is of episodic and semantic memory. In episodic memory, there are things that you exercise yourself, as in which place you were when someone heard a big news or the first job interview movement. Synthetic memory involves the fact that the context does not remember you. Just remember the fact. As Delhi is the capital of India or the iron sinks in water. The episodic memories with a visually context. Semantic just info, as restructures believed that retrograde the first episodic memory is performed in the dementia, i.e. chronic amnesia. Semantic memory is safe, but many times this theory proved wrong, as the case came from a present tube. After the accident, she remembered her wife, her children, she remembered the college. Even basic facts like Madrid is the capital of Spain, he also forgot. But it was remembered all of the basic generic things like tomatoes color as many weeks a year. It showed that the most generic patterns in brain damage were the same most save. Specific facts, experiences, names, dates, and so on quickly forget. Generic memories serve the longest in mind. It is said that the memories with patterns are never faded quickly. Even from Steve's case, it turned out that sedentic memory doesn't seem to be completely the same. A memory with a spatial fact is saved, but a generic memory is saved. The same was proved in research later. Whether it is head injury, Alzheimer's or Korsakoff's syndrome, special facts, everything are. Recalls with generic info, i.e. patterns, remain in mind. As there were research on memory of people in different types of diseases, the difference between generic memory and spatial memory began to appear very much important. Memory gives content of our mental life, but not every memory is equal. Some memories are saved from the brain, whether it is bad, especially in old age. Spasic memory means that just tell one thing, as Paris is the capital of France. Generic memory means that whole group or class talks. Tomatoes such as usually are red, because there are millions of tomatoes and it applies to all. Most of us use generic memory very often, while very low of spatial memory, just as the common man misses in a fact month with the capital of Paris. But tomatoes are red. It comes to almost everyday meditation. Whenever the market goes to or eat salads, generic memory becomes very strong in the brain. He quickly converts into long-term memory and gets brain stores in parts of Alzheimer's who suffer less damage even in diseases like Alzheimer's. The ability to recognize language and things is both on generic memory, whenever we see a new object or hear a new sound. What is this? Because the generic memory of that class is already made in our brain. As you never saw an old car in life, but you understand that this is a car, or when someone hears an unacknowledged dog's voice, you know that's the dog. That's just because the generic memory of that group remains in our mind. That's why identifying language in things go on both generic memory. Some brain-died Cs completely spoil these memories. Forgot the meaning of the present words. Anomia or normal does not recognize things, i.e. associative agnosia. But this happens only if the part of the neocortex of the brain suffers direct damage. Damage to subcortical structures does not affect generic memory, so language and object recognition abilities that are typically sustained in normal aging, because it runs full of generic memory and does not break down from subcortical damage. Both the spatial memory parts depend on neocortex and subcortical structure, so if one of the two damages, then this memory is quickly fed. But generic memory is just dependent on neocortex, so they have to damage the targeted portion of the brain to damage them. That's why generic memory is mostly left with age and dementia. There are also safes, another refuge that repeatedly done something or learning leads to a much larger part of that thing in mind. It says the pattern expansion, the reproduction of a nailed finger of the muscles or the blind people is larger than the brain. It is possible to have a lot of memories left in the big memory area if there's an injury to the brain or some neurons in old age. The second way is to become an effortless expert. Practice as well as brains to any skill to use low energy, low resources. As much as you learn, the lesser the work of the brain begins in it. So if you had any trouble or turmoil, you don't have to do daily tasks or older learning skills. Even when you lose tired, you can easily do the identified work. But the new thing comes in trouble. Both the pattern expansions and the effortless experts work together to protect your memories and skills from being stalked and keep you healthy for a long time. Even in old age. How does long-term memory build on a very small level of the brain's microscopic? It's still researching scientists. But so clean is that memories are made due to chemical and structural changes in synapses, namely neuron connections. Once there is a memory recall, the more often it becomes a little change. Like sand, the drift of water repeatedly forms new groups. Recalling every time makes the connection of memory hold a little new context. And this is the resurrection that memories never remain 100% same. A little bit changes. That's why generic memory is the most stable, the most safe in old age, and is often left in brain diseases. A lot of scientists have learned about how memory is formed and how to miss, but the whole picture is still not clean. The greatest help in this has been given by brain study from computational neuroscience, i.e. computer modeling. The first neuroscience was mostly run on experiments and observances, but now there is a lot of instant roles of the therapeutic models. With the help of computers, scientists create networks like brains and check how the network works, how memories are formed and recall. This field uses a lot of small computer neurons connected to each other. It works exactly like real mind. A neuron alone cannot do something special, but when all neurons work together, the power comes. Knowledge and information spread throughout the network. There is no place. Computational models shows that many times such new quality in the network automatically emerges that were not already programmed. These are called emergent properties. These are the most interest property contractors. Attractor means a group of neurons in which a stable activity pattern becomes itself without any external input. The entire pattern is waved when a little part of a contractor is also active. A little water flows into the same groove as the sand becomes a deep groove. That's why you've seen anything in life. Whether the pen is small, bigger, there is any color. Mind the inside is the same attractor activate and you understand instantly that this is the pin. Another concept of the attractor is the basin of traction. Anything that is close to that category will also come to the same instructor. That's why when we mix two animals in muffin experiments slowly, people find a clean difference where there is a dog and where a cat. This is possible because of the contractors. Neural nets become attractors. But the brain also has similar circuits. It is getting proof. Scientists believe that our recalls are actually such attractors. Whenever we recognize something or make a memory recall, it is actually the old neural network, i.e. attractor reactive. The module theory, which was the first quite famous. That's the different module for every work in mind. Just like your grandmother in a neuron, i.e. grandmother's image is stirred. It spoke the grandmother sale. But now the cystists believe that it is not right. Attractors are not modular, but distributed. A tractor can spread across multiple different cortical areas. Just as you see someone's face, remember his name. Because the visual info in the brain, i.e. face, and auditory info, i.e. names, are associated with the same intractor, only a small part can be activated to the entire tractor. This is the mechanism of generic memory. Generic memory devices are powerful cognitive tools, and we'll further clean it in the chapters how much it works. Chapter at Memories, Patterns, and the Machinery of Iron. When a very sensible person or an expert resolves a difficult or sudden problem, all people remain surprised when they tell themselves. Wisdom is also meant that you take things in advance that the rest seems to be absolutely sudden. The wisdom is not limited to just recognition of the pattern, i.e. recognition seen repeatedly, but the strength of recognizing the pattern plays a very important role in it. This means a lot of non-tractors in the mind of the sensible human beings, those who quickly tell the right path in different shapes. It takes time to become such patterns and settle in the brain. The same patterns help us find the functions of many probables with great rapid and easily. It is generic memory that is formed with age. With this, the intent with age increases the strength of the deceleration from the inside. Many think that the intent is the reverse of thinking. Let us know everything without thinking. But in fact, the intent means a squeeze of your old experience that accumulates so well in mind that you don't even know how your brain grabbed the right thing so quickly. That's what Herbert Simon explained. As the brain learns new patterns, it becomes intuition and sharp. It was quickly identified, and the ability evolution to take instantiation, i.e. the development, gave us millions of years ago. As we see the snake, our brain gets a signal of fear or danger immediately. This automatic reaction comes from the small place of brain named amygdala. This reaction is so fast and automated that there is no chance to think. The same pattern recognition and instant decision-taking mechanism is also in the neocortex of our brains that we ourselves have make your life from experience. Sometimes it can also be mistaken, but often this mechanism helps us. An expert makes such an understanding of his old experience and learning that they don't need to think frequently to solve a new problem. The famous scientist Richard Feynman also spoke to many paid agencies. Feeling fine. This real mental is the way to save the work of the mind. It also looks in everyday tasks. Just see the headlines by not reading all the articles in the newspaper. The news makes sense as the patterns are already made in his mind. It grows with power age. Now the question is whether as we are old, the wiseness of the person gets himself. Actually, this is not a sense of understanding and experience. It is hard. The people who have kept the mind active for the brain challenges in their lives are intensified even at an early age. Research has shown that people who have lowered rejuvenation power either with general knowledge and vocal age as it keeps or decreases, but whose rejuvenation power is good, their knowledge and vocabulary grows up to a growing age, even till the age of 80 years. That's why those who accumulate in their lives the patterns of understanding, i.e. the patterns of irony, continue to strengthen and accelerate the brain even at an early age. Many studies have also proved that job performance does not decrease with age. The real understanding of the work, i.e. the test knowledge, does not decrease much with age, but more strong in things like memory or concentration. Tacit knowledge means skills that we learn from our experience, and not just books or trainings. This knowledge works in real price solving. That is why older people often perform great performance in their work. Now talk about the descriptive knowledge and the principal knowledge. Descriptive knowledge means the truth of things like it. As 5 and 5 are 10. It is true and no control over it. But what should the principal knowledge mean, or how to walk on? This knowledge dips on your needs, desires, and decisions. People often, what should we do if you ask for an understanding or an expert? Both types of knowledge in the brain accumulates like descriptives and interceptive patterns of recognition, but the place of living in both the mind is different. Descriptive knowledge is mostly in the back part of the brain in the temporal parietal occipital lobes, while the principal knowledge is in front of the frontal lobes, i.e. the brain. Both hemispheres, i.e. half of the part, have different roles. Wisdom and experience in further chapters on the role of different parts of the brain connected to and in the detail. That will make it easier to clean how real wisdom patterns are formed and how they live with age. Chapter 9, Upfront Decision Making. Nowadays, the frontal lobes of the brain are getting the most research on the further part. This part is very important for our thinking, planning, and decision making. How to change the frontal lobes of the brain from childhood to old age. That's why it's more attention to the psychis today. It was not easy to understand what the frontal lobes actually do, so it took time to science. The frontal lobes of the brain are like a conductor, i.e. the leader of the music orchestra if understood in easy language. As the conductor itself plays no instrument, but it becomes music by mixing everyone. The same frontal lobes connect and organize the rest of the brain. Most of the people in the first neuroscience were aware of the truth of things like the descriptive knowledge. The real role of the frontal lobes is in the receptive knowledge, i.e. what to do. The rest of the mind is the expert in one work, but the frontal lobes work complexes together. like making planning, handling different tasks together, and taking the right dissipation. It is also called executive function, which is the CEO of the company. There are also a hierarchy inside the frontal loops levels. The front part takes large dissipations and the back parts are divided into small parts to the dissipation. When a problem becomes more complex or logical, the frontal lobes need more. We first saw that the memory is formed in the same part of the brain accumulates where the processing was taken. Similarly, whatever planning, problem solving, or diseases we take in life, their patterns also store in frontal lobes. These are called executive memory. It works frequently in executive memory life. When an old synchronization comes out in new style, means the principal knowledge, i.e. how to solve life's problems, are stored in frontal lobes. The person who makes this generic memory accumulate is the right way in difficult times quickly finds. He doesn't have to think about the new problem every time, he has already become patterns in the mind. In this way, frontal lobes is a very important part for our vidyalaya, i.e. sensible and expert. Scientists first researched basic things like perfection, movement, or memory. But now there are also a focus on the parts of the mind where qualities such as motivation, judgment, math, morality, and are formed. So now become new fields like social neuroscience, behavioral economics, neuroeconomics, and neuroscience, where it is seen how people take dissipation in a bogus, i.e. confusing or unclear functions. What is the descriptive cognition truth and the precipitative cognition that is right for me? You are connected, but both are different. Today, neuroscientists believe that the frontal lobes of the brain are much needed for the positive knowledge. In a case, the person may know the right-wrong difference, i.e. descriptive cognition, but if he is not able to use him in his or her decision, she is not able to use it in his or her decision is. As research has grown, frontal lobes are now considered the most essential part in neuroscience. The first part was not given muchness, but now it's the hottest topic. This is especially the further part of the prefrontal cortex frontal lobe that controls our thinking, planning, moral decision-making, and social behavior. Studies have also shown that those who have a damage in frontal lobes are difficult to understand themselves or others or decide the right-wrong. Prefrontal of violent criminals, several times a decrease in coex or inactivity is found. Now the question is whether there is no moral instinct in our mind. Scientists believe that indirectly is essential for frontal lobes' moral development, but morality is formed from culture and experience and is not completely hardwired in mind. Prefrontal is the real role of cortex, organizing our twigs and thinking, make a relationship of what happened before and after. By going ahead, we can understand the causes and results. Hence, the wise, planning, and right dissidents are the main center frontal lobes. The well-developed prefrontal cortex brain is the next part of the brain. If this happens, it is important to understand the relationship. It is only in humans, not found in the rest of the animals. That is why humans are at the forefront of things like language, morality, ethics, and complex thinking. When the child learns language or we use language in everyday conversations, so the prefrontal cortex is very active. If a person thinks about a person, so he finds the things behind. As if I do this, it would be the same. This thinking is not limited to just language or morality, but also works in any deceased or sensible. The frontal lobes are also necessary to learn the difference of the right-wrong, regression, i.e. regretting and learning from the old experience. In those who have damage in frontal lobes, this quality decreases. Don't think if I've done so. Understanding the pain or thinking of others. Understanding insight and moral reasoning. It is also a part of the vidyalaya, i.e. sensible. The frontal lobes are the most essential for all of them, as this quality helps us to make decisions by understanding others' feels. The prefrontal cortex has led to the quality of the human beings. Because of the same, our thinking has been so evident. But this does not mean that all the quality is only in humans. Many animals also have a basic level, as many times the dog also makes sense of their owner's healing or they know what the owner needs them. It is also a kind of methy that comes due to the frontal lobes. Frontal lobes remain connected very well from the rest of the mind, but these connections take from 18 to 30 years to complete natures. This is why 18 in the societies are considered to be the age of maturity, i.e. prudency or responsibility, and at the age of 30, human beings are considered to be ready to take large disabilities. Planning like frontal lobes and their executive functions in every human being, impulse control, and apathy, mental flexibilities are at different levels, as everyone's height, weight, or blood pressure is different. Similarly, the quality of the mind is different in every human being. It is also called executive intelligence. Now think the man of a middle age is writing a book and he is not a professional writer. He first makes a complete plan in his mind. Idea thinks, then starts writing. Meaning makes it first outline, then adds details. All this is possible because of its frontal lobes. When he decides what is the important or when he changes the topic, he becomes a focus. All this is due to the frontal lobes. Even when she identifies what the reader feels good or boring, she tries to go into the reader's mind. It is also amazing of the frontal lobes. Frontal lobes can be slightly weaker with age, but those who take complex issues throughout life have a much longer strong. People can take effective diseases even after aging. People of life create a neural library from experience, in which many generic executives are stored in ways to solve different synchronizations. That's why people find new problems quickly. Executive talent is not the same in everyone, as everyone has different ability of music or sports. Similarly, executive intelligence is different in all. IQ test cannot be avoided as soon as the frontal lobes of the brain are spoiled. IQ normalized can, but the decision-making or the heavier can completely worsen. True executive intelligence includes planning, mental focus, enthopathy, mental flexibility, and capacities of others' feels or minds. People who are interested in understanding the mind of others often become more good leaders, friends, or teammates. If one is always talking about himself, then executive intelligence is considered less. At the same time, those who talk to others and take out the maximum information from them are truly insightful and be aware of the understanding. People who just do their things usually don't become an effective expert. Chapter 10: Novelty, Root, and the Two Sides of the Brain. The puzzle of the frontal lobes of the brain showed how much our brain hides its secrets in a stubborn way. But the more interesting is the duality of the mind. The two parts are carrying the left and the right hemisphere, the more hardly the thing is to do. What is the question of all? Why is the mind beaten in two parts? It is important to understand the question, especially when it is worth a mental talent, wisdom, and competence. We know that both genius and iron are very different. Talents and geniuses usually look at an early age and come up with a sense of understanding or age. What is machinery in the brain behind these two? How are both things connected, but there is different understanding? The vidum, i.e. sensible, and compression are both glued on the pattern, i.e. patterns are formed in the mind that help to quickly identify new problems that resemble old problems. But what happens if a problem does not match any old pattern? The brain pattern does not form the entire pattern several times, so slowly makes. Just keep half incomplete. At the moment, for the clarity, assume that either the brain has been found or not found a residency pattern, i.e. two types of options. One who is identifiable, i.e. familiar, and others who are absolutely new, i.e. naval. How does the mind face both? It comes with two parts of mind, left hemisphere and right hemisphere. Every level of the brain has a deity. The structure is the twin of every pathway. First it seemed that both parts are exactly the same as symmetric, but now it turns out that the symmetry is not completely, just roughly. Actually, both parts work together by joining themselves and chatting, i.e. cross-talk. And there are a lot of pathways in the midst of them, such as corpus callosum and so on, which both hemispheres are constantly combined. The mind does not work two separate parts, but works like an integrated whole. But it's loaded with unity contrasts. Small differentiates become large functional differentiations. There are a few things that do not have a deity, such as endocrine glands, pineal and pituitary glands. Renegerict call the melen point of body and solve to the pineal gland. Actually, its work is to make melatonin and control sleep-wake bicycles. Left and right hemisphere talks about the most misunderstanding language. From the beginning, it is believed that the left hemisphere is the main for the language. In adult patients, if there is damage to the left hemisphere, language goes aphasia, but the right hemispheric damage does not happen. Due to this, the left was called Langda's dominant hemisphere. But it is not so clean in children, and it is quite later understood by neuroscientists. When the right hemisphere is bad, non-language problems come. As a result of one's face recognizing, it is not possible to understand prosopagnosia or music. People from the same experiment assumed that the left hemisphere is simply for the language and right for the visual special work. Left began to be called the dominant and the right to all dominant hemisphere. But in reality, this thinking is not completely correct. When the neuroscientists looked at every level in both the structural and biochemical defenses of further deep research, not only in humans but also in animals, as required for spikes, the planum tends to be larger in the temporal and frontal upper column left, and this difference also shows in the great abs apart from humans. Even in mice and rats, some differentiations appear, i.e. the left-right difference of the mind in evolution very long before the language had started. Similarly, the pathways of chemicals such as dopamine and norepinephrine are also different in both hemispheres. In the hippocampus required for memory, the left-right asymmetry also gets. All men and animals come in. It is clear that hemispheres are not only limited to language or visual specials and not only to humans. These defenses are part of the evolutionary process of millions of years. It's wrong to think that the left is just for the language and the right just visual special. Both in structure and function difference on both level is. On this difference plays its own role in every spies. Yet, in the popular media, people call the left to the analytical sequence and the right to holistic simultaneous. But it's just metaphors, not a true psychotropic expression. It is only a metaphor that does not prove wrong in science. No real explanation. So neuroscientists are now in the best way to explain the difference between both hemispheres and deeply. The language difference is just a small part. The real difference is something deeper that is common in both humans and animals. Actual defense, what is it? This is the further research question. I had at that time. The focus of my theory was that the real difference is in old and new things, i.e., nobody and family. I thought that if you understand how both hemispheres are different, we have to look at the process of brain in a dynamic way, not like static things. Our mental life is always changing, and the real keyboard is learning, i.e. learning not just a school or classroom, but a mastery of the whole life outside the world and also inside themselves. This is a gradually occurring process, no sudden miracles. My thinking was that both parts of the brain play separate but complementary roles in this process. Right is the role of hemispheres, exploring new things, daring and disposing unknown things, while the left, i.e. the work of the left hemisphere, is handling the already made patterns and routines. Disposal of efficiently from things that come in advance. I came to the idea in 1960 when I was learning neuropsychology at the Bordenko Institute of Moscow. I saw that the young hemisphere in children is not as dangerous as the elders, but the right hemisphere's injury shows much effect in children. I thought that the control of the brain along with cognitive development gradually shifts from right to left hemisphere, perhaps in the whole life. That time was just the observations. There was no pushy scientific proof. After the new research began, it turned out that both hemispheres the wiring has two large microdefenses. The first difference is in the type of cortex. The heterodal association cortex in the right hemisphere is much that connects different sensory info together. But the model T specific association cortex in the left hemisphere is much more that every sense like watching, listening, touching process its information differently. As one breaks the 3D thing into three different axes X and Z, the left hemisphere's sensory info is divided into different grindings. But right hemisphere all over connects sensory information together and creates complete picture. The second difference is in the connections of both hemispheres. The connections inside the left hemisphere are mostly in nearby resents. Just like taxi service works inside the city, the functions in the right hemisphere are in the faraway resonance. As airplanes that go from a continent to another continent, spindle sails that send signals far are also higher in the right hemisphere. This is especially true for right-handers because most of the research is taken on right-handed people. Both hemispheres are not quite sure in the work of the left-handers or both hands. Yet the right hemisphere in most cases is responsible for new learning and for the left old routines. The most interesting part of this novelty routinization hypothesis was that the roles are not always fixed but also changing. What is new today will become old tomorrow. Today, the right part of the mind will have to work. After a while, the work will become routine for the left hemisphere. It also shows that every person's brain works differently, because who is new to one can be old for another. The biggest test of this theory was that if one is becoming a new pattern, whether it is to understand something or learn a new solution, then the first right hemisphere will be active. Then gradually, the movements of the left hemisphere will increase. The mental center of gravity gradually shifts from right to left. There was another speciality of the idea that it also applies to humans as well as animals. Pattern recognition and learning not just our thing. Animals also use this skill. As my dog breed commands or biscuits recognizes the doorman, even when he sees for the first time, i.e. nobody routinization hypothesis can also give a solution for the entire mycelian evolution. Any language that is more than non-language theory. Actually, brain duality's true language is associated with a deeper and old evolutionary system even more than language. Chapter 11 Brain Duality in Action. I was a little scary when I was slowly digested in my brain with nobility routinization. Because this thinking was quite different and bold, I thought it should definitely check. So I made several tests together with my friend and neuropsychologist Luis Costa. Our motive was whether the idea ticks in wacky. Science has the funniest thing when you think something new and different and it really goes out. When everyone is thought to be clear on one side and you may be able to think something new, the happiness that you get is most different. Outdoor is good to get compliments from, but the real fun is in peace of the inside when you pass by testing your own thinking. At the beginning we had two kinds of evidence. One should look at patients who are hurt in the left or right of the brain. The second one who is absolutely healthy, to check the auditory process from the tuchistoscope to the visual process or earphone. That time all the ways were a little older and limited, but still worked. Surprisingly, the evidence was ticked every time on our theory. We test again and again every time the results were coming to our favorites. That's why in 1981, we've seen this theory in a general hemisphere defense in the exhibition and use of descriptive systems. Gradually it began to be clear that every process of learning in the brain starts from right hemisphere in an hour or early years. The right side is more active when something is completely new, but as it becomes identifiable and easy to know, it seems to take part of the brain, i.e. the left side control. This pattern which the real meaning of a synchronization catches. At last there are stores in the left hemisphere. This evidence was challenging that chronic thinking of neuroscience in which it was believed that just makes a difference from language. The difference in reality was that the work is new or old. Suppose there is a language task, but there is a little twist in it. Just as in a word, which is a letter, or match the verb now, the right side is more active. But as the same task becomes everyday, the left part begins to control it. Anyone identifying the visual work like any of the known identifiable shuffles, the left hemisphere is active. But the right hemisphere is active if there is an unknown face photo. Now that new technology like PET, fMRI, EEG and so on, the mind's activity and clearer looks. Now it became clear that the cognitive center of gravity control gradually shifts from right to left. Whether task is any, be a language or another skill, and whether it is in hours, months or years. This shift is also seen in the same experiment that for a few hours. At the beginning, the right part is activated when the subjects are taught, but as it comes to the left part control. The same was seen in music. The left hemisphere is active in the right, but professionals in the beginners. Even the language is not the monopoly of the left hemisphere. The right hemisphere language in the beginning in children helps a lot to learn. In children, if the right side is demise, the language development is very difficult. If the left hemisphere damage, if you are in the language, you are in the language. But the right hemisphere's injury does not have the same effect. Brain dynamics becomes even more complex in learning the second or third language. The second language dips on a slightly chronic language, but that's new. New research revealed that both parts of the time-minded learning the second language remain active. While in the first language, the left side is more active in the first language. Only the language is not the rest of the generic patterns also stored in the left hemisphere occur. Whether it is associated with language or from nonverbal skills, identifying new things or objects or using something like teasers, tie-tyings, and so on, all left hemispheres have in stripe patterns. If the left hemisphere damage occurs, the language pattern recognition or motor skills can be incomplete in all. On the other hand, the right part left side is mostly necessary until the pattern is completely made. In childhood or when new things are coming, if the right hemisphere in childhood does not work correctly, then children from social skills, routine exiting or adjusting to the new environment. Children and older people are often socially orchard, fear new things and get nervous about doing anything outside the routine. As humans grow, different patterns store in their left hemisphere and deal with the help of already made patterns even in the new situation. That's why the center of the cognitive control gradually shifts from right to left. It is not a sudden one day, but different time for different skills is. On roughly, it is a basic cycle of mind, learning, creating patterns, and then taking work with the same pattern. The two sides of the brain are right and left. And in one process there is control transfer from one to another. This is brain duality in action. When you think of the whole life, most of the research is asked about what is the difference between children and older people. But now when the elderly are interested in changing the brain in the old age, the question also began to rise that young people and what is the difference between the elderly. Techniques like PET and fMRI over the past few years have seen how the active parts of the brain change with age. Research has found that the control of the brain is gradually shifted from the right to the left, as well as the cognitive gravity. Right prefrontal cortex is more active in young people, but as humans are older, the left prefrontal cortex seems to be more active. It doesn't make the difference that the work language or visual. This pattern looks in both. Meaning is the right to left shift from childhood to old age. This idea was told by my two friends Jason Brown and Joseph Jeff first, and now it is also getting a psychotropic proof. So it seems that this right to left shift of the cognitive control is not only for the youth from childhood but the entire life process. In early childhood, the role of right hemisphere is the highest. It's time to move the daring and new things, but aging the role of the left hemisphere with increases. Then it starts to look at things from wisdom and experience. Now the question is how the knowledge in both hemispheres is charted so that their role changes on different stage. At the moment, the cystists are researching significantly. There is a simple exam to understand that it can be reproduced in two ways as there is a big data. One is to remove all data, i.e. Pisces, by showing each other data points separately. Diddles are lost in the first method, but the average thing appears. In second method, every single different data point looks, but there is no big picture. Similarly, the knowledge in the right hemisphere is such a cent as the grand average of a data i.e. men's and standard development. A lot of things are lost in detail. The knowledge in the left hemisphere is such a start as the scatter plot diagram. Every special option has its own different points. Library of every particular experience. Now let's say you have a new problem. If the left hemisphere already has a pattern, then it is known to be the problem identified and you will be able to solve according to the experience. But if there is no such pattern, then the general experience of the right hemisphere will be the activist who will work like the average information. As your kitchen looks like a jelly, if the left hemisphere recognizes her jam, you will eat her. If the liquid soap is identified, the dish will put in the washcloth. But the default option with right hemisphere will be activated if you don't feel the thing at all. That is, you will work carefully or throw it away as the age of the human being grows. By the way, the library of the pattern is formed in his mind. This pattern is deposited in the left hemisphere. That's why we're mostly going to work with shortcuts in patterns. More mental does not have to work. That's why left hemispheres with age rely much on and lower on right hemisphere. This shift is slowly formed and it has the effect that it also makes a difference in mind and aging. Further, the book will talk about the same in detail as well as dealing with new things like nobody in just the right hemisphere is not the big role of the frontal lobes. Frontal lobes are most active when a new challenge comes in front of the human being. The role of the frontal cortex decreases when the same task becomes easy and automatic of the everyday. Creativity also dips on the work of frontal lobe. A study saw that the frontal lobes of creative people remain much active on both sides, while less creative people just dip on the left frontal lobe. That's when a mindful challenge comes to the creative's frontal on both sides lobes use, but less creative people just use the left side. The same study also saw that creative people have a greater activity in the right side of their mind when they work new, especially in frontal lobes. Now that it turned out that the shift of the left from the right is filled with life, the question is whether it happens to be the same with everyone or can also matter. So far what we know is that every brace is slightly different. The creativeness in some people remains lifelong is, whether age is any, their brain wiring may be different. Think if there is a test that allows us to nap the iron, then check the activity of the brain, perhaps the ones in which the wisdom is high. The left prefrontal cortex has a very strong activity in the people who remain creative even after the old age have a right and left prefrontal cortex on both sides of their mind as we understand the work of both parts of the brain. We are the deepest secret of the cognition and get closer, but the cognition does not work alone. He moves together with the emotions i.e. feelings, and the relationship between the two hemispheres is our topic of the next chapter. Chapter 12 Magdalene on Project. There are many topic opens over the past few years in brain research that were previously oversized, as the first-minded reading of emotions seemed very difficult and less emotional work for the serious scientist. Everyone thinks that it's just a matter of feelings. No, brain! Neurosciences did not even know where the neurobiology of immune start from. This thinking changed due to researchers like Joseph Lodox, Richard Davidson, Antonio Damas. Let's gave the role in amygdala's immunes. Amygdala is the old part of the brain called limbic brain. It turned out that it is already present in the brain. For quite a time it was believed that the newest part of the brain is neocortex just for thinking, thought, and logic. There is no feelings. All the senses that feelings just come from the old part inside the brain i.e. all cortical and the new part of the brain i.e. neocortex just thinks of cold minds, but it was not right to think. It also includes neocortex and the cortical part of the emulation is also divided into two parts. This system is one of the great discoveries of neuropsychology for the left hemispherical positive emissions and for the right hemisphere negative emissions to delegate emissions in the two parts of the brain. It was first seen in the presence with brain damage. The damage in the left hemisphere i.e. the damage caused by the damage. But in the right hemisphere the damage to the mania or very light see joy or buffetry came. The effects of both were visible and when the presents were placed in different emotional securities. Previously it was believed that the impact of damage in the left or right hemisphere is simply because people understand how much their problem is. Left hemisphere's damage goes to the language and the present gets depressed if it is very sad of its loss. At the right hemisphere, many times people do not recognize their lack. Anosognosia therefore comes to the bay. Left of your own body to the present in anosognosia the part is a stranger and he does not believe him. People are very disturbed and afraid of their condition because of the language loss in the damage of the left hemisphere. But the research showed that the relationship with hemispheres is not just because of the awareness. That's where the damage is. The damage in the left frontal lobe makes depression much higher, but it's tangled that the present doesn't even reveal its problem after the damage to the frontal lobe. So how to depression? The present dish is happy or cooled several times in the damage of the right frontal lobe which cannot be expelled from awareness. Many times in the damage of the left hemisphere, people begin to cry without causing them and without causing them in the damage of the right hemisphere. After this, the study of the parts of the normal people and the brain began. E.g. and later P.T. fMRI showed that if people are happy or pleasant things appear, the left hemisphere is especially the left prefrontal cortex is more active. Right hemisphere and right prefrontal cortex active when showing sad or unpainted things. Also in a video game, the left frontal lobe was more active if people are winning money, and the left prefrontal cortex becomes active and right less active even in the right frontal lobe meditation on losing money. The mean brain damage and neuroimaging studies have shown that both hemispheres play exactly the inverted roles in the emotions. For joy, like left hemisphere positive emotions, and for fear, anger, sadness, such as right hemisphere negative emotions. Absolutely, these are Jung-like systems. After this, there were studies on the visual emotional style. Davidson and his fellows found that the left frontal area is more active, the people are charitable, and those whose right frontal area is more active, people remain more sad or depressed. If the activity of the left frontal area is reduced, the sadness and depression comes. Right frontal activity is associated with negative emotions disorder, and social rejection pain is also felt in the right frontal cortex. The emotional style is seen from childhood. Left frontal activity in 10 months happy baby it was more, and the right frontal activity was higher in the child who had a cry of the same age. Amygdala is also part of this system. Left amygdala in healthy people is more active on positive things, while the right amygdala in anxious people is more active at the time of fear, and the left amygdala in depressed people remains less active. The right age of people with generalized anxiety disorder is often larger, and if the right amygdala is removed, it becomes difficult to understand the impression of fear. Cingulate cortex and thalamus also role in emo's play, but they are not fully understood in hemispheres. But it seems like these systems are the same as the left-right division. So overall prefrontal cortex, amygdala, cingulate cortex, and maybe some more structures together control the emulations and create two different systems. For negative emo's with left side and right side, most of the emo's in real life are mixed with a bittersweet, so both move along the system, on their roles remain different. Now it comes to mind enhance understanding about both parts of. The first were two paths of neuroscience. A cognition, thinking, language versus visual, and second emotions, positive versus negative effects. Never created connections between the two, but nobility combines both the routing theory. The left hemisphere cognitive roots is for patterns that store util information and is therefore associated with positive emotions. The right hemisphere is for nobility I. Right side active in finding new solution when old pattern does not work occurs. It is triggered by a visually negative emotion. Biochemistry also shows that dopamine is high in the left hemisphere. Norepinephrine is high in reward positive emotion routine and right hemisphere. Nobility, depression, negative emotions, decreases serotonin. Finally, the question arises whether the hemispheres come from the role compaction in the events or make a difference in the signature from the emotities. This chicken is a question that is not a direct answer, but it's clean that the prefrontal cortex is most of the time emo's active. In left frontal cortex positive emotions. In right frontal cortex negative emotions. The role of the prefrontal cortex is to decide whether it is good for us and not just what is abstract true. The control of the emulations in the brain is from both vertical and horizontal circuits. Amygdala instant emotion gives and frontal lobes rational emotion. Both circuits together create our feelings. The bad feel with a good feel right with the left. Both circuits make balances by joining themselves. So far we explained that motion and what is the relationship of the cognition in itself, and how are the two parts of the brain i.e. hemispheres. But every person has different emotional and cognitive style. Now let's see what connection is from the two parts of the brain of every human thinking and healing. Think if there's a Project Depression drug near the famous explorer Magellan or Columbus, perhaps he is partying in his city in the space of getting into the sea, and the US probably never discovered by the Europeans. It's funny thinking, but it has a truth. New search most often comes from inside restlessness and dysfunction. This is associated with the right hemisphere of healing mind. Those who are absolutely happy and satisfied. He does not have a hobby of finding new things, changing the world, or taking a risk. Who will try if everything looks exactly? The image of most creative and large explorers is also not happy rounds, but is immersed in a little irritating thinking from the inside. Many large writers, scientists, and explorers are also battling with bipolar disorder or depression. The Redfield Jameson, anyone who suffers from a depressive disorder. He wrote that creativity and brain disease have a relationship. Some researchers like Harshman and Leb said that many is the key to a depressive disorder genius. He saw many large artists and leaders like Bethon, Barron, Dickens, Newton, Pushkin, Bang, Churchill inside all of them as bipolar. Churchill came to the Depression tour that he called Black Dogs. A lot of King Maharaja like Napoleon, Hitler, Stalin also falls into the same category. That's how it's all the things that most have on the stories and stories. Anyone, there is no data. But Stanford University's Corner Strong and Terence Kettler showed that people who have artistic creativity, their personality traits get more than those who struggle with light bipolar or depression instead of common ones. Meaning light depression or negativity increases creativity several times. Nobody is more likely in people. Now the question comes, what goes to brain behind the bipolar disorder? Imaging studies have shown that the left hemisphere in depression is less active and right hemisphere in the mania. The left side is less active when the deposit occurs in the bipolar disorder, and the role of the right side changes when it occurs in the mania. It is usually seen that most of the time left hemispheres in bipolar presence are less active and sometimes come to the bust of energy. This combination fuels creativity. Inside dissatisfaction and energy wave in the middle beach. The emotional tone is not always the same. It also changes with age. Young guys, and if all it seems quite boring when it comes to something right, just as there was no big motive in life. That's the restlessness, this tension and stubbornness divide leads youth to stacking and rebellion. The movement of the world's big politics has also begun by students. Whether it is US, France, China, or Indonesia, this is the healing of the right hemisphere. As we grow at age, our field changes. Research shows that age as well as negative emotions are reduced and positive emotions are increased. Brain's amygdala's negative emotions at activity decreases, but the activity on positive emotions remains the same. As we are old, our brain starts shifting towards positive emotions. The role of the left hemisphere becomes much. It is also a culture that peace and satisfaction are considered good at the growing age. While in the old age, if an elderly is too restless, people consider him strange. Yes, the disease of depression in the old age gets much, but it is not necessarily part of aging. Like rest diseases, cancer, osteoporosis, hair loss, age grow with. As soon as the depression also increases the risk. But if an elderly is calm and happy with himself, he is part of normal aging. So shifting from the right of power to the left in both parts of the brain, i.e. the right hemisphere in childhood is more active and younger hemisphere with age. It moves both in thinking, i.e. cognition, and feeling, i.e. emotion. It is part of brain's entire life journey and shows unity of how we think and feel. Chapter 13, The Dog Days of Summer. Both of aging, i.e. brain. What is the effect on both the hemispheres? Is the bearing on both the same? Most of the scientists did not pay attention to the question, as the first never thought that both parts could have a difference. But when it came to understand that the control of the brain with age gradually shifts from the right to the left hemisphere, the question also seemed to be astonishing whether the repeated use of the left hemisphere is much more durable at the age, and how if so. That's why I don't have a very rainy boring morning in 2003 forced out. That day there was so fast rain that my dog Brit was not ready to go on the walk outside. As soon as we went out of the building, he sat down and pulled me back and brought it inside. Anyway, there was such a bad rain that the human beings shy away. That's why I got time free. I took this opportunity to work and went to the Human Brain Mapping 2003 conference, taking place at the Marriott Marquis Hotel in New York. Brain mapping is a separate technique of neuroimaging to see the activity and structure of the scientist's brain. Either brain's photo is taken from techniques like CT, MRI, PET, SB, CT, and MDIE structure, or brain work mode, i.e. function, is seen. The revolutionary change in mind-brain science caused by neuroimaging, as the astronomy from the telescope changed astronomy. Similarly, the world of neuroscience changed from brain imaging. I myself work in this field and try to keep updates from new discoveries happening in it. Several posters were engaged in the conference, where scientists of their research visual presentations give. I went to see posters in a place of talks, as there is a lot of studies found together. My focus was on the change in brain with aging. Scientists know that as the age increases, brain's salicy, i.e. deep ladders that give brain a walnut look, and ventricles, i.e. empty spaces, grow, i.e. the shrinkage comes in brain, especially in frontal loops. But does this change be the same in both hemispheres? A study of Johns Hopkins University and National Institute on Aging, it was found that as we are old, brain suki, i.e. brain growth, is thin and shallowed. This change especially shows more in the parietal and occipital parts of the right hemisphere, while this effect was low in the left hemisphere. Another MRI study in Australia showed that a portion of the brain changes much lower with the age at the grey matter left hemisphere of the insula, but in the right hemisphere it sharply decreases. Another study in Japan also revealed that the gray of the right hemisphere after the age of 40 matter begins to quickly reduce, while this fall in the left hemisphere begins later. A study of the UCLA saw that in 18 to 30 years old young people also have a slight drop of gray matter, but that's too much in the right hemisphere. The 5 different studies like this show that as the age increases, the right hemisphere has much atrophy than the left. No studies could show up. Why is the question? The first was explained that as we grow, our left hemisphere is more active in the work of brain and the role of right hemisphere gradually decreases. Is there more use, i.e. any part of brain from more use avoiding edges? That's why the left hemisphere is much better than the old age, and the right hemisphere whose use decreased begins to dilate quickly. What is this? If you look at the statuses, if in a random way, this 5 study shows the decline of any one side, every study's right hemisphere has a much more decliner. The chance to show was 0.5, but the 5 men's studies showed much decline in the constantly right hemisphere. It is just 0.03, which is very low. This is not just a luck game, but a real right pattern. It was also believed that the right hemisphere in old age is weakened quickly. But now the direct and solid evidence of neuroimaging has been found that right hemisphere is faster than the declined left eye. The left hemisphere withstands the effect of aging better than the right hemisphere. Chapter 14. Use your brain and get more of it. Why does the right hemisphere weaken early in old age? And how does the left hemisphere remain stronger? Is there any biological regeneration? Can it happen that brain renews itself with age and the process moves much faster in the left hemisphere? Use it and lose it. That's what you'll lose. This simple rule was first considered only in sports, but now it is very important in brain science. The first scientists believed that the majority of neurons as a brain, that's why nervous cells are born, just as many live. And as we are old, these neurons gradually die and do not become new neurons. This concept called no neurons or NNN principle. By a considerable time, the scientists believe that in brain like the rest of the body, cell regeneration cannot become new cells. But some scientists such as Fernando Notbaum and Joseph Eltman saw neuron regeneration in animals, and he repeatedly said that it can happen even in the brain of humans. That time no one thinks of them was. It was all that it is necessary to save old neurons to save human memory, knowledge, and self. But the truth is that as we grow, neurons are lower than that. CT and MRI also sees that neurons are low in completely healthy people. So if neurons are decreasing, then how does our old knowledge save life? The answer is that the memory and patterns store in a duplicate way in a lot of places. Now talk with old or no neurons exactly wrong has been proved. The research of Elizabeth Gold and others has shown clean that lifelong new neurons remain in brain of animals like mankind, especially in frontal, temporal, and parietal lobes. Very essential part of hippocampus, i.e. memory. Also new neurons are formed, even in diseases like Alzheimer's. This findings is quite extinguishing as it means that brains renew themselves even after aging. Now, the scientists know that new neurons remain old even in the brain of humans. Whether it's old, let it happen. Meaning neurons do not stop being in childhood. He is a whole life. And the biggest thing is that the new neurons have to be dependent on our activity too. As exercising in the gym leads to muscle growth, brain exercises can also become new neurons from mental activities. In an experiment of the Salk Institute observed that those who live in a fun environment with rat toys, wheels, and tunnels make new neurons 15% more. And it also performs better in rat memory test. In the hippocampus of brain neuron growth was most viewed. Exercising also increases chemicals such as BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, in brain that promote neuron growth. First it was seen only in the evidence animals, but now the human is also visible in brain. A study showed that adult humans also have new neurons in hippocampus. Even in the presence of Alzheimer's can become new neurons, meaning use it and get more of it. If you use the mind, then it can increase both size and power. Now the question is that how does mental activity change the mind? Earlier it was believed that the connections between neurons in brain become more strong. Dendrites and sciences grow and small blood vessels are also enlarged. All things are right now. But now it also turns out that new neurons are also formed. Animal research has shown that new neurons from mental activity are formed in many brain parts, especially in the necessary part for the prefrontal cortex, i.e. decision making, and hippocampus, i.e. part of which is important for memory. Meaning human brain can also become new cells, and this process can be accelerated by mental exercise. It is a good exam in London's cab drivers, i.e. taxi drivers, those who have to remember new routes daily. His hippocampus have been found older than the rest. As many years it works, the hippocampus becomes as large. This same logic weightlifter is applied on the muscles. As much as you grow, the brain of the musicians is different. His brain's whole screws is the sound processing that is part of the double size than the common ones goes. And this size dips so how much they have done music practice over the last 10 years. A study of the same jugglers saw that the gray matter grew in their tendril and parietal lobes after practicing 3 months juggling. Gray matter then decreased when the juggling left. Some people urge that perhaps the musicians, cab drivers, or language experts are born the same. Their brain grows from the beginning, but the studies showed clearer that the more the practice of brain growth, i.e., brain living under the biology, can be grown, our brain changes our activity. That's how to use your mind and make your mind bigger. Here again, the left and right hemisphere comes a role of two parts of the brain. Our right hemisphere works much when you learn earlier, but the left hemisphere becomes much more active when we become expert in that skill. This means as the experience grows, our left hemisphere is constantly more commonly used and becomes stronger. That's why language learning or both juggling shows special bearing in the left hemisphere. So it takes much benefit from repeated use of the left hemisphere throughout life. The mental exercise is more effective in aging. That's why the scientists saw that the right hemisphere in old age weakens quickly and the left hemisphere is stronger for much time. That's why. That is, the right hemisphere weakens much faster in old age. Left hemispheres get the benefit of as much as aging, the more mental exercise is. Therefore, the left hemisphere is strong in old age for much time, because he is constantly strengthened by a whole life mental activity. The first thing was considered a lot. Studies or education can protect the brain from diseases like Alzheimer's. Now, it's probably because the people who have read their minds in their lives are much stronger than their left hemisphere. Chapter 15: Pattern Boosters. The new research that has been coming from nowadays has shown that the mind is hard, i.e., mental activity our brain can really change. That's why I'm sure that if the old age people are active, they can save their brain to a great extent. That's why I created a cognitive exercise program in New York that still people come and will continue to come further. From time to time, it was observed that the study protects the brain from weakness and dementia. It is because people who read their lives are more difficult because their work and life esta is so. When someone thinks well, the cognitive exercise makes his mind even more strong instead of just daily's random mental work. When I tell a new person the idea of a cognitive cement, I speak with a lot of faith in myself. But I am a little scary that people would consider or not. People think that exercising the mind is a matter of strange or deterioration. But if you think carefully, the mind is hard, that the mental exercise is from the beginning with us, and we never do it. Thus he has something, like art. Two things in history have been the most special in every culture. Athletics, i.e. sports, and art, i.e. art. Both have been a big role in society. Whether the Minovan of the old ground is people, or Anthenite, Egypt, or Greece, look athletics and arts as well as everywhere. Even today people go to the gym, see the show, painting, listen to sing. All this is part of our life. Everyone knows why athletics are beneficial. The body is strong. Hearts, lungs remain healthy. Discipline comes and any physical prepare for the challenge. Physical exercise is essential, even if there are no beneficial results. Now, let's talk about art. Art is also deeply linked in our life, but it's a bit difficult to understand its straightforward advantage. Many say we understand the impression from art, but some art grinds do not seem to be emotional, but are very logical or pathetic, such as Asher's drawings or classical music. Someone says art is just for appearances or is the ad of mental fitness. But in my opinion, art just time pass or there is no useless thing. I think the real advantage of the art is that it exercises both our minds and senses. As the body fits in athletics, the brain fits from the art itself. Art and music activate different parts of our brain. Let them work openly. Real life's mental tasks are often alike and repetitive, but art gives the new challenge every time. This leads to a complete workout of the brain. Parents today hear their children's mother, because it is believed to have a baby sharp mind that would be. A lot of scientists and leaders themselves were active in art or music, such as Einstein's violin, Churchill's painting, etc. Epilogue. I again got MRI after 2 years. There was no change, no new illness or danger. The little scar that was previously shown was no longer. It was just a mistake. No disease. I hope my old mind will still go well. How long does it know? Does it mean that I am now sensible? I'm not sure. I'm not happy must be cradle. But like all the rest, I have to make such neural patterns in my mind so that I can understand my world and live well. All my good bad things, my hard work and my carelessness together make me think. I remember that when I was 6 years old, the 15-year-old neighbor asks how to feel so big. Today I'm happy at the age of 58 and think about how to be 70, 80, or 90 years old. This book came by feeling the changes in my mind. I tried myself growing forward from the experience and understanding the real reason behind these changes. So I tried to understand the changing season of human mind from both culture and brain science angle. This story is not complete. We didn't talk much on the moral and spiritual aspects of our mind or not on how it is formed. Despite these shortcomings, when I see behind, I think I understood that as the age increases, everything in the brain does not worsen. Some things become stronger. It's not just a heart death, but also proves from science are. Is it really afraid of my age? Not exactly. Is I regret it? No. A little fear is a matter of concern as it gives the fire to proceed, and reminds that our life is limited. It should not be ruined. But there are two big lessons out of this book that seem close to the truth. The first lesson is that people who have used the brain right in their youth become a kind of mental armor in their old age. It strengthens them in the last years of their life. But this shield is no birth, there is a reward for many years. We irritate the clashes, but the truth is that it is the greatest sign of the coming yesterday. This is true in history, economics, politics, everywhere, and also in mind life. What is easily understood is a humor, ever known as expertise. He does not come to himself with age. This is the result of many years of mental practice. Socrates said the irony bends in wonder, and it is true even today. The real journey of our life passes through our minds. Thinking of life active, challenged, and filled with different experiences, people stand firmly in old age and survive the brain weakness. Like our bodies, our minds are also a result of age-old work. The second lesson is that the brain practice should never stop. Keep your mind in new challenges every age. Everyone nowadays knows the joy after running runner's high, but how many people feel the real pleasure to think of thinker's high? Everyone believes that the work of thinking also works hardest, but how many people really believe this? When I tell people that when I walk my dog, I get the best ideas in my mind, people often laugh or do not make sure, but the truth is, the world of brains is also your place in the journey. There's a must. Some people are physically active. Some people like the brain challenges as soon as possible. Some people prefer to live in the comfort zone, but the loss of the brainy lethargy looks in old age. William James said, "Don't waste the time of his youth." People who are always new thinking put the mind in hard work. He fits his mind until old age. Every culture is considered to be the wise elderly. Now again the old people are growing up, but no one is wise. This is the journey of mind. The price of aging is irony, but the real irony is real senseless. The old age is also like gold. I'll be able to make MRIs a few years later. Brain may have small changes, but I do it make a laugh. There are so many memories and patterns in my mind that I will take advantage of them and give my mind new challenges so that new neurons are formed and my brain never lose completely. I have also written this book with this motive. Hope you will have the chance to write something new even further. So much for today. We will then find you with a new book in a new episode. Thank you.